package wasn't mine. I should have known something was wrong when Carl, our neighborhood delivery guy, handed it over with that crooked smile of his. The return address was smudged, the weight felt off, and the label read, "How is the taste of Judges Johnson?" in someone's messy handwriting. Wrong address? I asked, turning the DVD case over in my hands. Nah, man, Carl said, adjusting his baseball cap. That's definitely for you. Trust me on this one. He walked away whistling, and I stood there in my driveway like an idiot, holding what I thought was someone else's mistake. Emma was at her evening yoga class, or so she said, and the house felt too quiet. I figured I'd pop the disc in, see if I could figure out who it belonged to, maybe get a laugh out of whatever weird home movie this was. I wasn't laughing 30 seconds later. The timestamp read 3 weeks ago. The camera angle was from our bedroom security system, the one Emma insisted we install after the break-ins down the street. She was on our bed, our sheets, in our house. But she wasn't alone. The guy with her was built like a linebacker, all muscle and swagger. I recognized him immediately. Travis, her personal trainer from that fancy gym downtown, the one she'd been raving about for months. He's really helping me get in shape, Nathan. You should meet him sometime. Well, I was meeting him now. They moved like they'd done this before, many times before. Emma's laugh, the one I used to love, sounded different, hungrier. She said things to him she'd never said to me. Did things with him she'd stopped doing with me years ago. The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was the conversation afterward. When are you going to tell him? Travis asked, pulling on his shirt. Tell him what? That his software engineer salary can't compete with your talents? Emma laughed, that cruel edge I'd been hearing more often lately. Nathan's harmless, soft, he'll never figure it out, and even if he does, what's he going to do? Write angry code? What if he finds out? Then I'll handle it. I work in HR, remember? I know exactly how to make someone disappear from their own life. I sat there for 2 hours, watching the disc play on repeat. By the third viewing, something had shifted inside me. The Nathan who'd walked into that living room no longer existed. In his place sat someone colder, someone who understood that being soft and being weak were two very different things. Emma came home at 9:30, stretching dramatically in the doorway. Great class tonight, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. Really worked up a sweat. I bet you did. She paused, something flickering across her face. You okay? You sound different. I held up the DVD case. Interesting delivery today. The color drained from her face, but she recovered quickly. Emma always was good at thinking on her feet. I don't know what that is, she said, moving toward me with her hands raised like she was approaching a dangerous animal. Nathan, whatever you think you saw, I think I saw my wife ducking her trainer in our bed while planning to destroy my life. She flinched at the language. I never swore. Good old reliable Nathan didn't use words like that. It's not what it looks like, she started, but I held up my hand. Emma, I've been writing code for 15 years. I know a logic error when I see one. You can't debug a lie by writing more lies. That's when her mask slipped completely. Fine, she snapped, crossing her arms. Yes, it's true. Travis and I have been seeing each other, but what did you expect, Nathan? You're boring, you're predictable. You make decent money and you're safe. But safe doesn't make me feel alive. Safe doesn't pay for the house Travis apparently thinks he's moving into. How did you... She caught herself. Look, we can handle this like adults. Divorce doesn't have to be messy. We can split things fairly. Fairly. I stood up, and for the first time in our 10-year marriage, Emma took a step back from me. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been having this conversation before you started recording auditions for wife replacement in our bedroom. Don't be dramatic, and don't you dare try to threaten me. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm just saying it's interesting how quickly fair becomes the preferred option once the cheater gets caught. Emma's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression hardened. Travis coming over. To our house? To pick me up. I'm staying at his place tonight. How thoughtful. He can meet the husband he's been cuckolding for the past year. It hasn't been a year, she said automatically, then realized her mistake. Oh good, only 8 months then. That makes it so much better. 20 minutes later, a black pickup truck pulled into our driveway. Travis stepped out looking like every suburban woman's fantasy of rebellion. Tight jeans, leather jacket, the kind of confidence that comes from never having to code your way out of a problem. He swaggered up to our front door like he owned the place. Maybe in his mind he already did. "You must be Nathan," he said when Emma let him in. His handshake was aggressive, all dominance display. "Emma's told me a lot about you. I bet she has. Though I'm guessing she left out some of the more recent details." Travis looked confused, but Emma stepped between us. "We should go," she said quickly. "Actually," I said, "before you leave, I have a question for Travis." "Nathan, don't... How long have you been planning to move into my house?" Travis's confident smirk faltered. "What?" "It's a simple question. On the video, you two were discussing timeline logistics. When you said his name's going off the deed, you seemed pretty sure about the details." Emma grabbed Travis's arm. "We're leaving. Now." But Travis was looking at me with new interest, like he was seeing me for the first time. "You recorded us?" "I didn't record anything. Someone delivered a recording to me." "There's a difference." "Who?" I shrugged. "Does it matter?" "The content speaks for itself." Travis took a step toward me, but I didn't back down. Maybe Emma was right about me being soft, but I'd learned something important in the last few hours. Soft things can be surprisingly hard to break. "You think you're clever?" Travis said. "I think I'm unemployed." That stopped him. "What?" "I think when Emma files for divorce and claims I was abusive, which is what she's going to do based on what I heard on that recording, I'll probably lose my job. HR departments don't like domestic violence accusations, even false ones. I think I'll lose my house, most of my money, and probably my reputation." Emma and Travis exchanged glances. "But here's what I think you haven't thought through," I continued. "When you burn someone's entire life down, you don't get to control what they do with the ashes." 3 days later, Emma called the police. I was at work, debugging a client's database corruption, when 2 officers showed up at my office. Everyone watched as they walked me out in handcuffs. Emma had filed a restraining order, claiming I'd threatened her and Travis with violence. "He said he was going to make us pay," she told the judge, tears streaming down her face. "He's never been violent before, but something changed. He's been different, angry. I'm scared of what he might do." The judge, a tired-looking woman in her 60s, granted the temporary restraining order and set bail at $5,000. I spent one night in county lockup sharing a cell with a guy named Rico who was in for unpaid parking tickets. "Women," Rico said when I told him my story. "They'll smile while they're stabbing you, then call the cops when you bleed on their dress." "She's not wrong about me being different," I said. "Different how? I used to think being a good person meant being weak. Turns out I had it backwards." Rico laughed. "Brother, the best revenge is living well." "No," I said, thinking about Emma's laugh on that recording, about Travis's confident swagger. "The best revenge is living well while they're not." That night, alone in that cell, I received a note passed through another inmate. The handwriting was block letters, careful and deliberate. "She filed the papers. Your name's out. His name's on the house now." I stared at the note until the words blurred. Emma had been planning this. The whole thing, the affair, the accusations, the restraining order, it was all choreographed. While I was processing betrayal, she was executing a business plan. So that's how it is? Fine. Let's see how they handle me off the leash. I made bail the next morning and drove straight to the only person I knew who might understand the technical aspects of what I was planning, Lenny Patterson, my former co-worker and current professional burnout. Lenny lived in a basement apartment that smelled like energy drinks and defeat. He'd been fired from our company 6 months ago for creative interpretation of network security protocols, which was corporate speak for hacking crap that didn't belong to him. "Nathan," he said when he opened the door, looking genuinely surprised. "I heard about your situation. Rough break, man. I need help." "Legal help? Because I know a guy..." "Technical help." His expression shifted, became more alert. "What kind of technical help?" "The kind that helps a soft man get hard proof." Lenny's smile was the first genuine thing I'd seen in weeks. "Come in. Let's talk." His apartment was a shrine to surveillance paranoia. Multiple monitors, hard drives stacked like building blocks, cables running along the baseboards like electronic ivy. He'd been tracking neighborhood activity for years, partly out of boredom and partly because he was convinced the homeowners association was running some kind of criminal enterprise. I've got feeds from 17 different sources within a 2-mile radius, he said, pulling up a complex interface on his main monitor. Traffic cameras, doorbell cams, the coffee shop security system, even some of the smart TVs that people never secured properly. What about my street? Oh, I've got your street covered, including your house. My heart stopped. What? Dude, you've been getting played for months. I got footage of that meathead coming and going from your place like he's got a key, which, by the way, he does. Emma gave him one in March. You've been watching my house for months and didn't tell me? Lenny shrugged. You never asked. Plus, I figured you knew. I mean, the guy wasn't exactly subtle about it. He pulled up a calendar view, each day marked with small icons indicating activity. There were dozens of entries. This is from last week, he said, clicking on a video file. Your wife and Captain Protein Shake discussing their post-divorce plans? Emma and Travis were in my kitchen drinking coffee from my mugs, talking like they were already married. The lawyer says we can claim emotional abuse, Emma was saying. Nathan's never laid a hand on me, but we can build a narrative. He's been withdrawn, hostile, making threatening comments. What if he fights it? With what? He's got no proof of the affair, and even if he did, no-fault divorce means it doesn't matter legally. I'll get the house, half his retirement, and probably alimony since I'll claim his abuse forced me to quit my job. And then? Then we sell this place and buy something bigger. Your gym is doing well, my settlement will be substantial, and Nathan will be too broken to cause problems. Travis laughed. Poor bastard probably still thinks he can fix this. Nathan thinks life is like code, Emma said. He thinks there's always a logical solution, always a way to debug the problem. He doesn't understand that some things can't be fixed. Some things are meant to be deleted. I watched myself disappear from my own life in real time. There's more, Lenny said. Want to see how deep this rabbit hole goes? Over the next 2 hours, he showed me evidence of a conspiracy that made my original betrayal look like a misdemeanor. Emma hadn't just been cheating. She'd been systematically documenting our marriage problems, creating a paper trail that painted me as an increasingly unstable husband. She'd been recording our conversations, editing them to remove context, saving only the parts where I sounded frustrated or angry. She'd been telling her friends carefully crafted stories about my controlling behavior and emotional distance. She'd even started seeing a therapist, not for help, but to create professional documentation of her fears about our marriage. It's actually pretty brilliant, Lenny said with grudging admiration. Evil, but brilliant. She's been building a case against you for months. What about Travis? Oh, he's got his own side hustle going on. 3 other married women, all thinking they're his special girl. Plus, he's been using his trainer access to steal client financial information. Identity theft, credit card fraud, the works. You have proof? Brother, I have enough proof to put him away for 5 years. The question is, what do you want to do with it? I stared at the screens, at the evidence of my wife's calculated betrayal, at the proof of her lover's crimes. The old Nathan would have turned it over to the police, trusted the system to handle justice. But the old Nathan was gone. I want to watch them burn, I said. But I want them to light the match themselves. Lenny's grin was wide and slightly unhinged. Now you're speaking my language. We spent the next week setting up what Lenny called the infrastructure. Untraceable internet connections, encrypted communication channels, and most importantly, a network of surveillance that would make the NSA jealous. The key, Lenny explained as he installed microscopic cameras around my neighborhood, is patience. We're not going to hit them all at once. We're going to let them hang themselves, one rope at a time. The first rope was Travis's gym routine. Every Tuesday and Thursday, he worked out at the same upscale fitness center where he'd met Emma. He had his own ritual, 30 minutes of weights, 20 minutes of cardio, then a long shower where he called his various girlfriends to coordinate his weekly rotation. It was during one of these shower calls that Lenny's hidden recorder picked up something interesting. Listen to this, Lenny said, playing back Travis's conversation with someone named Ashley. Yeah, baby, I'll be over Friday night, Travis was saying. Just tell your husband you're working late again. He's as clueless as Nathan was. What if he finds out? Then I'll handle it the same way I handled Nathan. These suburban guys are all the same, soft, scared, desperate to avoid confrontation. One threat of violence and they fold like cheap suits. You threatened Nathan? Didn't have to. Emma did it for me. Filed that restraining order, claimed he was dangerous. Guy's probably still trying to figure out what hit him. Ashley giggled. You're terrible. I'm effective. By Christmas, I'll have Emma's house, Nathan's money, and your husband's wife. Not bad for a year's work. I listened to the recording 3 times before I spoke. He thinks I folded. Can you blame him? From his perspective, you disappeared. Restraining order worked. You're not fighting the divorce, and Emma's already moving in with him. What's his schedule like? Clockwork. Why? Because it's time to introduce some chaos into his system. That Thursday, I waited in the gym parking lot until Travis finished his workout. I didn't confront him. That would violate the restraining order and play into Emma's narrative about my violent tendencies. Instead, I left him a present. When Travis came out to his truck, he found every tire slashed in a precise X pattern. But that wasn't the message. The message was what I'd left on his windshield, a printed photo of him with Ashley, time-stamped from the previous Friday, along with Ashley's home address and a note that read, "Soft enough to stay quiet. Not stupid enough to stay blind." I watched from across the parking lot as Travis found the photo. His confident swagger disappeared instantly. He looked around frantically, then pulled out his phone and made 3 quick calls. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but his body language screamed panic. The photo had been taken through Ashley's bedroom window. Travis would know that meant someone had been watching, someone had access, someone was playing a longer game than he'd anticipated. But that was just the appetizer. The main course came 2 days later when Carl, our neighborhood delivery guy, made another special delivery. I intercepted him at the end of my street, where the restraining order couldn't reach. Got another package for you, Carl said, that same crooked smile on his face. Oh, from who? Let's just say someone who appreciates good television. This DVD was labeled the sequel, You're Not Even the Main Character. I took it back to Lenny's basement and we watched it together. This time the footage wasn't from my house. It was from Travis's apartment, and it wasn't just Emma he was entertaining. Holy crap, Lenny whispered. This guy's running a full-service operation. The timestamp showed Monday night, the same night Emma had told me she was having dinner with her sister. She was there, but so was another woman. They were taking turns with Travis like he was some kind of rotating entertainment system. Emma doesn't know about the other woman, I said. And the other woman doesn't know about Emma. But now I know about both of them. What are you thinking? I was thinking about Emma's confident smirk when she'd served me with divorce papers. I was thinking about Travis's swagger when he'd shaken my hand in my own house. I was thinking about how they'd underestimated the soft man with the boring job and the predictable life. I'm thinking it's time to introduce them to each other. The setup was elegant in its simplicity. A single anonymous email to both women, sent from an untraceable account, with photos of Travis's double booking schedule and a simple message. He told you that you were special. He told her the same thing. Same day, same bed, same lies. Thought you should know. I sent the emails on Wednesday evening and waited. Thursday morning, Lenny's surveillance network picked up Emma storming into Travis's apartment. She had a key, so she let herself in, probably expecting to find him alone. Instead, she found him in bed with Ashley. The audio quality wasn't perfect, but we could hear enough. "What the duck is this?" Emma screamed. "Emma, wait, I can explain." "Explain what? That you've been cheating on me while I'm cheating on my husband for you?" Ashley, apparently, had not been informed about Emma's marital status. "You're married?" Ashley shrieked. "It's complicated," Emma started. "No, it's not," Travis said, and I could hear the desperation in his voice. "Look, we're all adults here. Don't you dare!" Emma cut him off. "Don't you ducking dare try to manage this situation?" What followed was 20 minutes of the kind of screaming match that ends relationships and starts lawsuits. Emma accused Travis of using her to get access to my assets. Ashley accused both of them of being psychopaths. Travis accused everyone of being irrational. By the end of it, all 3 of them were single. But I wasn't done with any of them. The divorce proceedings had been going smoothly for Emma until that Thursday. She'd been confident, prepared, armed with her carefully constructed narrative about my abusive behavior and her need for financial support during her recovery from emotional trauma. Then her lawyer received an interesting package. "Mr. Patterson," Emma's attorney called me that Friday, "I think we need to discuss some new evidence that's come to light." The package contained time-stamped surveillance footage of Emma and Travis together dating back 8 months. It also contained financial records showing that Emma had been transferring money from our joint account to Travis's business for 6 months, totaling nearly $30,000. And it contained audio recordings of Emma discussing her plan to frame me for emotional abuse. "Where did this come from?" her lawyer asked during our emergency meeting. "I have no idea," I said honestly. "I've been living in my friend's basement since the restraining order. I don't have access to surveillance equipment." Emma sat across from me, looking like she'd aged 5 years in 5 days. The confident woman who'd served me divorce papers was gone, replaced by someone who was finally understanding that she wasn't the only player in this game. "This is illegal surveillance," she said. "It can't be used in court." "Actually," my lawyer said, with barely concealed satisfaction, "most of this appears to have been recorded in public spaces, or with appropriate consent. The financial records are legitimate bank documents, and the audio recordings appear to have been made with at least one party's knowledge, which makes them legal in this state." "Nathan did this," Emma said, staring at me with something between hatred and fear. "He's been stalking us. I've been living in a basement, Emma. I don't even have a car anymore. My bank accounts are frozen. I'm not allowed within 100 yards of you, and I'm facing potential criminal charges based on your accusations." When exactly would I have had time to orchestrate a surveillance operation? But she was right, of course. I had done this. Not directly, not personally, but I'd set the pieces in motion. The difference was that now, for the first time since this whole nightmare began, Emma couldn't prove it. "The restraining order was based on false premises," my lawyer continued. "Given this new evidence of adultery, financial fraud, and potentially perjury, I think we need to reconsider the entire basis of these proceedings." Emma's lawyer was already looking like he wanted to withdraw from the case. "We need to discuss our options," he told Emma. "What options?" she snapped. "He's somehow turned this around on me. The evidence suggests that you may have committed several crimes in the process of filing for divorce. That's not something your husband did to you. That's something you did to yourself." I watched Emma's face as the reality hit her. She'd built her case on the assumption that I was too soft, too broken, too defeated to fight back. She'd never considered the possibility that soft and defeated might not be the same thing. "This isn't over," she said to me as we left the courthouse. "Yes, it is," I replied. "You just don't know it yet." But Emma was more resourceful than I'd given her credit for. By the following week, she'd regrouped and was ready for round 2. She started by going after my reputation. Emma worked in HR, which meant she understood how to destroy someone's professional life without leaving fingerprints. She began calling my clients, my colleagues, even my former professors, painting a picture of an unstable man who'd become dangerously obsessed with punishing his ex-wife. "Nathan's always been intense," she'd tell them, "but lately he's become genuinely frightening. I'm worried about what he might do next." She was careful never to make specific accusations that could be proven false. Instead, she planted seeds of doubt, let people's imaginations fill in the blanks. It was character assassination disguised as concerned warnings. Within a week, 2 of my biggest clients had terminated their contracts. My boss called me in for a wellness check that was really a fishing expedition to see if I was becoming a liability. Even Lenny started getting nervous. "She's good at this," he admitted as we watched my professional reputation crumble in real time. "Evil, but good. She's making a mistake, though." "What's that?" "She's assuming I still care about the same things I used to care about." The old Nathan would have been devastated by the loss of his career, his reputation, his place in the community. The old Nathan had defined himself by his professional success and social standing. But the old Nathan had also believed that his wife loved him, that his marriage was solid, that being a good person was enough to protect him from bad people. The new Nathan understood that when someone burns down your entire life, you don't rebuild the same house. You build something fireproof. I started with Travis. His gym business was built on a carefully crafted image of success and reliability. His clients were mostly wealthy suburban women who paid premium rates for the fantasy of personal attention from a fitness professional who made them feel special. But Travis had made a critical error in his operational security. He kept detailed records of his clients' personal information, Not just names and addresses, but family details, financial situations, even gossip about their marriages and relationships. It was part of his seduction strategy, knowing which clients were vulnerable and why. What he didn't know was that Lenny had gained access to his client database months ago. "This is a gold mine," Lenny said, scrolling through Travis's files. "This guy's got dirt on half the neighborhood. And now he's about to find out what it feels like when the dirt gets turned on him." The plan was simple. Make Travis's predatory behavior public knowledge, but do it in a way that looked like his own. Arrogance had caused the exposure. I started by creating a fake social media account for Ashley Parker, Travis's most recent conquest, and began posting what appeared to be innocent workout photos and motivational quotes. But buried in the image metadata were coordinates, timestamps, and coded references that only someone with technical knowledge would understand. Then, I waited for Travis to take the bait. It didn't take long. Travis was pathologically incapable of resisting an opportunity to show off, especially online. When he saw Ashley's posts about her amazing new fitness journey, he couldn't help but comment, sharing details about their training sessions that revealed far more than he intended. "Looking good, baby," he commented on one photo. "Can't wait for our private session tomorrow. I'll bring the protein shake." The problem was that Ashley Parker didn't exist, which meant Travis was publicly flirting with a ghost. And since the account was obviously fake to anyone who looked closely, it made Travis look like either a complete fool or someone who was comfortable conducting his business through deception. But the real trap was in the account's followers. I'd carefully curated a list that included several of Travis's actual clients, their husbands, and various other people in their social circle. When Travis started posting increasingly explicit comments to his fake girlfriend, he was doing it in front of an audience that included the women he was actively cheating with. The dominoes fell quickly after that. First, two of his clients confronted him about the Ashley Parker situation. Travis tried to explain that he'd been catfished, but the explanation only made him look more pathetic. These women were paying him for professional fitness services, not to watch him get scammed by internet fantasies. Then their husbands got involved. One of them was a lawyer who decided that Travis's access to his wife's personal information, combined with his online behavior, constituted a potential threat. He filed complaints with the state licensing board and the Better Business Bureau. Within a week, Travis's gym was under investigation for unprofessional conduct. His insurance company dropped him. 3 of his biggest clients terminated their contracts and demanded refunds. But the final blow came from an unexpected source, Carl, our neighborhood delivery guy. Turns out Carl had been documenting everything for months, not just as a favor to me, but because he was building a case for a civil lawsuit. Travis had been using his relationships with married women to gain inside information about their families, their schedules, their valuables. He'd then been sharing that information with his criminal contacts, who used it to plan burglaries and identity theft schemes. Carl had evidence of Travis's involvement in at least 6 different crimes. He'd been waiting for the right moment to take it to the police, and Travis's public meltdown over the fake Ashley Parker account provided the perfect opening. "I've been watching that piece of crap for 8 months, Carl told me when he delivered the news. He thought he was so smart playing all these women against each other. But he never noticed the delivery guy." Travis was arrested on a Tuesday morning right in the middle of a training session with one of his few remaining clients. The charges included identity theft, burglary conspiracy, fraud, and about half a dozen other felonies. As they led him away in handcuffs, Travis looked directly at me across the gym parking lot. I was just close enough for him to see me, just far enough away to avoid violating the restraining order. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just watched him disappear into the back of a police car, the same way he'd watched me disappear from my own life 6 months earlier. Emma's reaction to Travis's arrest was everything I'd hoped for and more. According to Lenny's surveillance network, she spent the first day in complete denial, calling Travis's phone repeatedly and leaving increasingly frantic voicemails. She drove to his apartment, to his gym, even to the police station, trying to find someone who would tell her this was all a mistake. But by the second day, reality had set in. Travis wasn't coming back. The man she'd destroyed her marriage for was a criminal who'd been using her as cover for his illegal activities, and now she was alone, unemployed, facing financial ruin, and married to a man who had every reason to hate her. That's when she made her biggest mistake. She came to see me. I was leaving Lenny's apartment when I saw her car parked across the street. She was waiting for me, Probably had been for hours. The restraining order said I couldn't contact her, but it didn't say she couldn't contact me. Nathan, she called as I walked toward my car. We need to talk. I don't think that's a good idea. Please, just 5 minutes. She looked terrible. The confident, put-together woman who'd served me divorce papers was gone. In her place was someone who looked like she hadn't slept in days, someone who was finally understanding what it felt like to lose control of her own narrative. What do you want, Emma? I want to fix this. Fix what? Our marriage, this whole situation. I made mistakes, Nathan, I know that, but we can work through this. I stared at her for a long moment, trying to decide if she was serious. You want to fix our marriage? Yes. The marriage you destroyed when you started ducking your trainer 8 months ago? She flinched at the language, but pressed on. It was a mistake. I was confused, unhappy, looking for something that was missing in our relationship. But I realize now that what I was looking for was always there. You're a good man, Nathan. We can rebuild this. Rebuild it? Start over. Counseling, therapy, whatever it takes. I'll do the work. The work. I know I hurt you. I know I made terrible decisions. But people make mistakes, Nathan. People can change. I walked closer to her car, close enough to see the desperation in her eyes. Let me ask you something, Emma. When you were planning to take half my assets and claim I was abusive, was that a mistake too? I never said you were abusive. You filed a restraining order claiming I threatened you with violence. I was scared. You seemed different, angry. I didn't know what you might do. So you decided to destroy my reputation, take my money, and drive me out of my own life as a preemptive strike against your own fear. I wasn't thinking clearly. No, you were thinking very clearly. You had a plan, Emma. A detailed, methodical plan to erase me from existence while you and Travis moved into my house and spent my money. The only thing you didn't plan for was getting caught. She started crying then, big theatrical tears that might have moved me 6 months ago. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry for everything. But we can fix this, Nathan. We can make it right. You want to make it right? Yes. Then you can start by answering one question honestly. Anything. If Travis hadn't been arrested, if your plan had worked perfectly, would you be here right now trying to fix our marriage? She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. We both knew the truth. That's what I thought, I said, turning away. Nathan, wait. No, Emma, you made your choice. You chose Travis over me, lies over truth, greed over love. The only reason you're here now is because your first choice blew up in your face. But I'm here now. That has to count for something. I turned back to look at her one last time. It counts for exactly what it's worth. Nothing. I drove away and left her crying in her car. In my rearview mirror, I could see her pounding on the steering wheel, screaming at herself or at me or at the universe that had stopped bending to her will. But Emma wasn't done fighting. Over the next month, she launched what could only be described as a scorched earth campaign against my life. If she couldn't have me back, she was going to make sure I had nothing left worth having. She reached out to every mutual friend we'd ever had, telling them her version of events. Nathan had changed, become obsessive and vindictive. He'd somehow orchestrated Travis's arrest out of jealousy and spite. He was dangerous, unstable, and anyone who maintained contact with him was enabling his destructive behavior. She contacted my clients, my former coworkers, even people I'd gone to college with, painting a picture of a man who'd become unhinged by his wife's infidelity and was now lashing out at everyone around him. I'm worried about him, she'd tell them. He's not the man I married. I think he might hurt himself or someone else. She was careful, always framing her warnings as concern rather than accusations. But the effect was the same. People started avoiding me, canceling meetings, declining invitations. My professional network began to crumble, and my personal relationships withered under the weight of Emma's whisper campaign. The worst part was watching old friends choose sides. People I'd known for years suddenly became distant, uncomfortable. They didn't want to get involved in marital drama, which was code for believing Emma's version of events without bothering to hear mine. My friend Jake, who'd been my best man at our wedding, called me one evening with obvious reluctance. Look, man, he said, Emma reached out to Sarah. She's worried about you, says you've been acting strange since the divorce started. Strange how? Obsessive, vindictive. She thinks you might be having some kind of breakdown. And what do you think, Jake? There was a long pause. I think divorce makes people do crazy things. Maybe you should talk to someone. Someone like who? A therapist, a counselor, someone who can help you process all this anger. I hung up on him. Jake had been my friend for 15 years, but he'd known Emma for 10. In his mind, the woman who'd hosted dinner parties and remembered birthdays couldn't possibly be the villain in this story. It was easier to believe that I'd snapped under pressure than to accept that the person he'd trusted had been systematically destroying lives. But Emma's campaign had an unintended consequence. It forced me to realize how shallow most of my relationships really were. The people who abandoned me based on her lies weren't really friends. They were acquaintances who'd enjoyed the social benefits of knowing a stable couple, but had no interest in messy realities. The few people who stuck by me, who asked for my side of the story, who bothered to look at the evidence, those were the relationships worth saving. And there was another unintended consequence. Emma's attacks were so relentless, so obviously coordinated, that they started to seem suspicious to anyone paying attention. Carl was the first to notice. She's trying too hard, he told me during one of our regular check-ins. When someone's telling the truth about being afraid of their ex, they don't usually launch a public relations campaign about it. They just stay away and try to heal. But people are believing her. Some people. The ones who want to believe her, who need to believe that the world makes sense and bad things only happen to people who deserve them. But other people are starting to ask questions. He was right. Emma's story had holes in it, and the more she talked, the more obvious those holes became. If I was really dangerous, why was she doing television interviews about our divorce? If I was stalking and harassing her, why couldn't she provide any evidence? If I was the one who'd orchestrated Travis's arrest, how had I managed it while under a restraining order and living in a basement? The breakthrough came when Emma agreed to appear on a local morning show to discuss surviving emotional abuse. She'd reinvented herself as a domestic violence advocate, speaking publicly about the importance of recognizing psychological manipulation and gaslighting in relationships. It was a smart move, positioning herself as the survivor rather than the perpetrator. But Emma had always been overconfident in her ability to control narratives, and live television was a different beast than private conversations. My husband seemed like a good man, she told the host, tears streaming down her face. Quiet, stable, reliable. But underneath that surface was someone who needed to control everything and everyone around him. When did you first realize you were in an abusive relationship? It was gradual. Small things at first, checking my phone, questioning my friendships, making me account for every minute of my day. Then it escalated. He became obsessed with my schedule, my activities, even my workout routine. That must have been terrifying. It was, and when I finally found the courage to leave, he couldn't accept it. He became vindictive, plotting elaborate schemes to punish me for choosing my own happiness. The host nodded sympathetically. What advice would you give to other women in similar situations? Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And don't underestimate what a controlling man will do when he loses control. It was a compelling performance, and it might have worked if Emma had stopped there. But she couldn't resist adding one more detail, one more flourish to make her story more dramatic. He even managed to get my boyfriend arrested on false charges, she said. That's how far he was willing to go to destroy my life. The host looked confused. Your boyfriend? Emma realized her mistake immediately, but it was too late. I mean, the man I was seeing after our separation. Nathan couldn't stand the idea that I might be happy with someone else. But weren't you still married when you started this relationship? Emma's face went white. We were separated. Legally separated? Emotionally separated. Our marriage had been over for years, but you were still living together? It's complicated. The host was now clearly uncomfortable, realizing that the victim narrative wasn't as clean as she'd been led to believe. The interview wrapped up quickly after that, but the damage was done. Lenny had been recording the broadcast, of course, and within hours he'd created a compilation video contrasting Emma's television claims with audio from her earlier recordings, where she'd discussed her plans to frame me for abuse. She called me controlling, I said, watching the video for the third time. But listen to this. He played Emma's voice from months earlier. Nathan's harmless, soft. He'll never figure it out, and even if he does, what's he going to do? Then this, he said, switching to her television interview. I was terrified of what he might do. He became obsessed, vindictive, dangerous. Two completely different stories. Same woman, different audience. The question is, which audience are you going to perform for now? That night, I made a decision that would have horrified the old Nathan, but felt perfectly natural to the new one. I was done playing defense. I was done trying to prove my innocence to people who'd already decided I was guilty. I was done being soft. It was time to go on offense. I started with Emma's employment situation. She'd been unemployed since her company had quietly let her go following Travis's arrest and the scandal surrounding their relationship. But Emma had been telling people she'd quit voluntarily to focus on her recovery from our abusive marriage. The truth was more complicated. Emma's former employer had discovered that she'd been using company resources, including her HR access, to investigate my financial records, employment history, and personal information. She'd also been sharing confidential employee data with Travis, who'd used it for his identity theft schemes. The company had been quietly investigating her for months, building their own case for potential criminal charges. They'd only held back because prosecuting an HR employee for data theft would have created a public relations nightmare. But that was before Emma started giving television interviews claiming to be a victim of domestic abuse, while simultaneously implicating her former company in enabling that abuse. She's saying we should have recognized the signs and intervened, Emma's former boss told me when I reached out to him. She's claiming that our HR policies failed to protect her from her abusive husband, even though she was the one using those policies to stalk me? Exactly. And now we're getting calls from reporters asking about our domestic violence protocols and whether we failed in our duty to protect our employees. That must be frustrating. It's more than frustrating, it's actionable. We've been patient with Emma out of respect for what we thought she was going through. But if she's going to drag our company into her personal drama while spreading lies about us, we're going to have to defend ourselves. How? By releasing the evidence of her misconduct. All of it. The data theft, the conspiracy with Travis, the misuse of company resources. We've been sitting on it for months, but she's forcing our hand. I didn't ask him to take any specific action. I didn't need to. Emma had painted her former employer into a corner, and they were going to fight their way out the only way they could, by telling the truth. The story broke 3 days later in the local business journal. Former HR manager accused of data theft and identity fraud conspiracy. The article detailed Emma's use of her company access to illegally obtain personal information about employees and their spouses, which she'd then shared with Travis for use in various criminal schemes. But the real damage came from the quotes Emma's former colleagues provided to the reporter. She was always asking inappropriate questions about people's personal lives, one coworker said. We thought she was just being friendly, but looking back, it seems like she was gathering intelligence. Emma had access to everyone's emergency contacts, insurance information, even their children's school records, another added. If she was sharing that with criminals, it explains a lot about the break-ins and identity theft cases we've seen in our neighborhood. The most disturbing part, her former supervisor concluded, is that she's now positioning herself as a victim, while the real victims are the families whose privacy she violated. Emma's media campaign collapsed overnight. The morning show that had featured her issued a public apology and removed the interview from their website. The domestic violence organizations that had been planning to feature her as a speaker quietly canceled her appearances. Most importantly, people started asking questions about her other claims. If she'd lied about her employment situation, what else had she lied about? If she'd been working with criminals to steal personal information, was she really the victim in her marriage, or was there more to the story? The dominoes were falling, but Emma still had one card left to play, our mutual friends. She organized what she called a healing circle, a group therapy session where our old friends could come together to process the trauma of watching our marriage implode. It was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon at Jake and Sarah's house, and everyone we'd ever socialized with was invited. The premise was simple. Emma would share her truth about our relationship, and our friends would have the opportunity to ask questions and offer support. It was positioned as a way for everyone to move forward together, to heal the divisions that our divorce had created in our social circle. What Emma didn't know was that Carl had been invited too. Carl had been delivering mail to our neighborhood for 6 years. He knew everyone, had been to their barbecues and block parties, was considered part of the community fabric. When Sarah mentioned the healing circle to him, he asked if he could attend. "I've been watching this whole situation unfold," he told her. "I think I might have some perspective that could help everyone understand what really happened." Sarah, who was desperate to find some resolution to the awkwardness that had been poisoning every social gathering for months, agreed immediately. "I wasn't invited, of course. The healing circle was designed to help our friends process their relationship with me in my absence, to give them permission to cut ties without guilt. But Carl was there, and Carl had brought a laptop. "I want to show you all something," he said during Emma's presentation about my controlling behavior and psychological manipulation. "I think you deserve to know the truth about what's been happening in our neighborhood." What followed was a 2-hour presentation that destroyed every lie Emma had told and exposed every scheme she'd orchestrated. Carl showed them the timeline of her affair with Travis, the evidence of her financial fraud, the recordings of her planning to frame me for abuse. But most damaging of all, he showed them footage of Emma practicing her victim story, rehearsing her tears and her trembling voice in front of her bathroom mirror. "She's been performing for all of you," Carl told the stunned group. "Every conversation, every plea for support, every tear, it's all been calculated to manipulate your emotions and turn you against Nathan." Jake, who'd been one of Emma's strongest supporters, looked like he'd been slapped. "This is real?" he asked, staring at the screen where Emma was practicing her wounded bird expression. "All of it?" "I've been documenting everything for months, waiting for the right moment to show people what's really been going on. Why didn't you tell us sooner? Would you have believed me?" Emma's very good at playing the victim. "She's had you all convinced that Nathan was the monster while she was systematically destroying his life and conspiring with criminals to rob your neighbors." Sarah was crying, but not for Emma. "Oh God," she whispered. "What have we done to him?" "You believed a lie," Carl said simply. "The question is, what are you going to do now that you know the truth?" The aftermath of the healing circle was swift and brutal. Within 24 hours, Emma found herself completely isolated. The friends who'd been supporting her, defending her, enabling her campaign against me, they all disappeared. Worse, they were angry. They felt manipulated, used, betrayed. They'd invested emotional energy in comforting Emma and vilifying me, only to discover that they'd been participants in an elaborate fraud. Jake called me that Sunday morning. "Nathan, Duck, man. I'm so sorry." "It's okay, Jake." "No, it's not okay. I should have listened to you. I should have asked questions instead of just believing her. She's very convincing. She's a sociopath. What she did to you, what she did to all of us." "There's something wrong with her." I didn't disagree. "Can you forgive me?" Jake asked. "Already have." "How?" "I abandoned you when you needed me most. Because you're here now. That's what matters." But Emma wasn't done. Even with her social support network gone, her reputation destroyed, and her lies exposed, she had one more move to make. She decided to run. I found out from Carl, who'd been monitoring her activity as part of his ongoing documentation project. "She's packed up and left," he told me. "Looks like she's headed out of state." "Where?" "Don't know yet, but she's liquidating everything. Sold her car, closed her bank accounts, even tried to sell some jewelry that I'm pretty sure belonged to Travis's other victims. She's fleeing. Or regrouping. Emma's not the type to just disappear and start over. She's planning something." He was right. 3 days later, I received a call from a detective in another state. "Mr. Peterson? This is Detective Williams with the County Sheriff's Office. I'm calling about your wife, Emma Peterson." "What about her?" "She's filed a police report claiming that you've been stalking and harassing her across state lines. She says you've followed her here and are continuing to threaten her safety." "I haven't left the state in 6 months." "Can you prove that?" "I could, actually. Lenny's surveillance network didn't just watch other people. It watched me, too. Every movement, every location, every activity was documented and time-stamped. Detective, I can provide you with GPS logs, video footage, credit card records, and about a dozen witnesses who can verify my location for every day of the past 6 months. I haven't been within 100 miles of your jurisdiction. That's unusually thorough documentation. I've learned to protect myself. From your wife? From false accusations." There was a pause. "Mr. Peterson, can I ask you something off the record?" "Sure." "Is your wife Mentally stable. It was the first time anyone in law enforcement had asked me that question, and I had to think about how to answer it. Detective, my wife is extremely intelligent, highly manipulative, and completely without conscience. Whether that constitutes mental illness or just evil, I'll leave to the professionals to decide. She seemed very convincing when she filed her report. She always does. That's what makes her dangerous. The detective called me back 2 days later. Mr. Peterson, we've completed our investigation into your wife's claims. And we've referred her case to our fraud unit. It turns out she's been running the same game on 3 different men in our area, claiming each of them was stalking her while she systematically robbed them blind. Is she under arrest? She's gone. Skipped town before we could bring her in for questioning. But we've issued a warrant, and we've notified other jurisdictions to be on the lookout for her pattern of behavior. Emma had finally overplayed her hand. Her need to be the victim, to be the center of attention, to always have someone else to blame for her problems. It had driven her to keep running the same scam until she got caught. But for me, her disappearance wasn't victory. It was just the end of one chapter. I spent the next month rebuilding my life, reconnecting with the friends who'd stood by me, repairing my professional reputation, and trying to figure out who I was supposed to be now that the war was over. It should have felt like closure, but it didn't. Emma was gone, Travis was in prison, and I'd been vindicated in the eyes of everyone who mattered. But I still felt hollow, like something essential had been burned out of me during those months of fighting. That's when Carl made his final delivery. "Got something for you," he said, handing me a thick envelope. "Consider it a going-away present." Going away? I'm retiring, moving to Florida. Figured it was time to let someone else handle the neighborhood drama. Inside the envelope was a complete dossier on Emma's activities over the past year. Not just the surveillance footage and audio recordings I'd already seen, but financial records, communication logs, even psychological profiles that Carl had apparently commissioned from a private investigator. "How did you get all this?" Carl smiled that crooked smile one last time. "I used to be a cop, Nathan. 25 years with the city police before I took this delivery job. When I saw what Emma was doing to you, it reminded me of cases I'd worked. Predators who used the system to hunt their victims. You've been investigating her this whole time? I've been building a case. Not just against her, but against the whole network she was part of. Travis wasn't working alone, and Emma wasn't his only accomplice. There's a whole operation of people using romance and relationships to commit financial crimes. And now the FBI has everything they need to shut it down. Emma's just one piece of a much bigger puzzle, but she's the piece that's going to bring down the whole operation." I stared at the dossier, thinking about everything Emma had put me through, everything she'd destroyed, everyone she'd hurt. What happens to her now? Federal prison, if they catch her. 20 to life for conspiracy, fraud, identity theft, and about a dozen other charges. She picked the wrong neighborhood to run her game in. And if they don't catch her? Carl shrugged. Then she keeps running, keeps hurting people until she finally picks the wrong target. People like Emma don't stop, Nathan. They just find new victims. That night, I sat in my new apartment, smaller than the house I'd shared with Emma, but clean and honest in mine, reading through Carl's dossier. Emma hadn't just betrayed me. She'd been running variations of the same scam for years, moving from city to city, husband to husband, leaving a trail of broken men and stolen money behind her. I wasn't her first victim, and I wouldn't have been her last. But I was the first one who'd fought back effectively. The first one who'd been smart enough, angry enough, and patient enough to turn her own weapons against her. The old Nathan would have felt sorry for her, would have wondered what had made her into the kind of person who could destroy lives without conscience. The new Nathan just felt tired. I closed the dossier and put it away. Whatever happened to Emma now was out of my hands. The FBI would handle her legal fate, and karma would handle the rest. But I had one more thing to do. The next morning, I drove to the police station and walked into the detective unit. "I'm here to see Detective Harris," I told the desk sergeant. "Regarding? I want to drop the charges against my ex-wife." Detective Harris looked confused when I explained what I wanted. "Mr. Peterson, are you sure about this? We have solid evidence of fraud, perjury, and filing false reports. These are serious crimes." "I know. Your ex-wife put you through hell. She tried to destroy your life, your reputation, your relationships. Why would you want to let her walk away from that?" I thought about it for a moment, trying to find words for something I wasn't sure I fully understood myself. Because I don't want to be the kind of man who destroys people, even people who deserve it. I want justice, not revenge. There's a difference? Justice is about making things right. Revenge is about making things hurt. Emma's already lost everything that mattered to her. Her reputation, her relationships, her freedom to hurt people without consequences. Adding a prison sentence to that won't make me feel any better. And if she hurts someone else, then that's between her and them. I can't spend the rest of my life trying to protect the world from Emma. I can only protect myself. Detective Harris looked at me like I was crazy, but he processed the paperwork. Walking out of that police station, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. Not because Emma was gone, not because I'd won, not because justice had been served, but because I'd chosen to stop carrying the weight of her crimes. The old Nathan had been soft because he'd been afraid of conflict, afraid of hurting people, afraid of being seen as the bad guy. The new Nathan was soft because he chose to be, because he understood that strength wasn't about what you could destroy. It was about what you chose to build. That evening, I was cleaning out the last of my old files when I found something I'd forgotten about: the original DVD that Carl had delivered, the one that had started this whole nightmare. I held it up to the light, watching the rainbow reflections dance across its surface. Such a small thing to have caused such destruction. A few gigabytes of data that had revealed the truth about my marriage and changed the trajectory of 3 lives. I thought about destroying it, about burning it or crushing it or throwing it away. But instead I put it back in its case and wrote a note on the label: evidence of who I used to be. Then I locked it in my desk drawer, not because I wanted to remember the pain, but because I never wanted to forget the lesson. People will hurt you. People will lie to you. People will try to destroy you for their own entertainment or profit or convenience. But the choice of who you become in response to that pain, that choice is always yours. Emma had tried to make me into a victim, then into a villain, then into nothing at all. Instead, she'd made me into someone I could actually respect. 6 months later, I got a call from Detective Williams, the cop who'd investigated Emma's false stalking claims. "Thought you'd want to know," he said. "We caught her." "Where?" "Phoenix." She was running the same scam on a guy there, but he turned out to be a federal agent working undercover on an identity theft task force. "Is she going to prison?" 25 years, federal time, no parole. The judge said it was one of the most elaborate and callous fraud schemes he'd ever seen. How many victims? 43 men over 8 years. She stole nearly $2 million total, destroyed dozens of lives, caused at least 3 suicides that we know of. I sat with that information for a long moment, thinking about the men who hadn't been as lucky as me, who hadn't had a Carl, watching their backs or a Lenny to help them fight back. "Thank you for telling me," I said finally. "There's something else. She wants to see you." "What?" "She's been asking to meet with you, claims she wants to apologize, make amends, explain herself. Her lawyer thinks it might help with her appeal. What do you think?" "I think she's still running game, even from prison, but the choice is yours." I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "No. You sure?" "Might give you some closure." "I already have closure. Emma doesn't get to be part of my life anymore, not even to apologize." "Fair enough. Can't say I blame you." After I hung up, I realized something. I didn't feel angry anymore. Not at Emma, not at Travis, not at the friends who'd abandoned me or the system that had failed me. The anger had been useful for a while, had given me the energy to fight back when I needed to. But anger is like fire. It burns what you feed it, including yourself if you're not careful. I'd chosen to stop feeding it, and now it was gone. What remained was something cleaner, quieter, but infinitely stronger. The knowledge that I could survive anything, that I could protect myself without becoming the thing that had hurt me, that I could choose softness as a position of power, rather than weakness. The old Nathan had been soft because he didn't know how to be hard. The new Nathan was soft because he'd learned the difference between strength and cruelty, between justice and revenge, between protecting himself and destroying others. Emma had tried to break me, and in a way, she had. She'd broken the naive man who believed that being good was enough to protect him from bad people. In his place, she'd created someone harder, smarter, more careful, but no less kind. Someone who understood that the best revenge against those who try to make you cruel is to remain human anyway. Someone who knew that winning isn't about destroying your enemies, It's about refusing to let your enemies destroy you. I never saw Emma again. I never spoke to Travis after his arrest. I never looked back at the life they'd tried to steal from me. Instead, I built a new one, better than the old one, founded on harder truths, but softer ground. And every morning when I woke up in my small, honest apartment, I smiled at the same thought. They called me broken, right up until I broke them all. But I'd broken them by refusing to break, and that made all the difference.